Hello, I'm Kurt Waldrop, and this is Radical Freedom. In universities across the land, we're being told that we should take America in the direction of socialism. Well, it would be a paradise to each according to his need, from each according to his ability. At least that's what Karl Marx wrote in the 19th century. But how well have these ideas aged? Now, Winston Churchill, one of my personal heroes, once said that the inherent vice of capitalism is the unequal sharing of blessings, but the inherent virtue of socialism is the equal sharing in miseries. Now, this is a system that has always been unsuccessful at its stated purpose, which is to lift everyone up equally. Eliminate poverty, create true justice, institute utopian society, and that has never happened. Oh, there have been some economic successes. The Soviet Union, for example, went from being a backwards, mostly agricultural country to being a superpower in less than 50 years with a socialist government. How? Well, they stripped away people's property, took from those that had it, and gave it to people that hadn't earned it to use. They took away free speech so you couldn't criticize the system. They killed somewhere in the neighborhood of 28 million people in order to institute these utopian policies. National Socialist Germany had an economically much lighter form of socialism that actually encouraged private property. But at the end of the day, both your possessions and, well, even yourself were still property of the state. Again, as with the USSR, there was no real freedom of speech, of the press, of religion, of firearms ownership, etc. The standard of living for the average German did rise, though, and that's great, as long as you don't look at the mass graves of all the Jews and other minorities who lost everything so that it could be redistributed to the masses. Getting rid of Jews and other troublemakers, by the way, was actually something that Marx wrote about and suggested back in the 19th century. Now, it still amazes me that there are those on both the left and the right that will angrily argue that communists are the opposite of Nazis. I say that by their actions you shall know them. Now, the People's Republic of China is probably the closest thing to a success story that socialism can point to. They did pull the country into the modern era with a Stalinist-style government, but some estimates are that nearly 80 million people had to die to achieve this goal. Over the last few decades, they've moved from more of a Soviet socialist state to more of a national socialist state where individuals can create goods and services that people want and will pay for. There are many millionaires in China today, but there's still no real freedom and, well, everything, property and people, still belong to the government, and they won't let you forget it. Fact. Countries that call themselves socialists in one form or another killed many times more people just during the 20th century than all the religious wars in history combined. Some may point out the Scandinavian socialist experiment is a win, but while there are no mass murders done in the name of their political system, when I traveled through there a few years ago, I met many young people and was struck by how few of them had jobs. One told me that if you just said you're too depressed to work, the government would give you an apartment, money for food, and a bit of entertainment. Now, the apartments are small, and it's not much money, but I was told that it beat having to find a job, then after taxes bring home about the same amount of money as not working at all. That may explain the crazy high suicide rate in Scandinavian countries. It also explains their dismally low gross national products. Rampant corruption, a thriving black market, high inflation, and violence against any dissent. That is the heritage of most socialist regimes. Every time true socialism has been tried, eventually you end up with a two-tiered social system. The rulers who live like kings and everybody else. The more capitalism that's allowed in these countries, the higher the lifestyle can be for the common person. The more true socialism that is practiced, however, the fewer rights, more poverty, and, well, more death. Still not convinced? Well, here are 5 solid reasons that socialism sucks. 1. Socialism is all about turning people against each other. It has to be, after all, if you believe in controlling other people's lives, the people who don't wish to be controlled need to be vilified. If you believe in confiscating the wealth of successful people who don't give it up willingly, then others must be convinced that they're terrible human beings and deserve to be punished. Eventually, those who depend on government for their livelihood and those that the government smears and loots to pay them off come to hate each other. Remember all the outcry from the left against the evil 1%? Yeah, like that. 2, it eliminates free speech. Think about it. How much freedom of the press is there in North Korea? How much freedom of speech was there in the Soviet Union or Nazi Germany? Ever wonder why conservative speakers at universities are shouted down by the left? It's because socialism requires protection, propaganda, intimidation, and darkness to survive. Socialism can't survive honest, informed debate about its merits among people who are free to choose or reject it because it could not survive the conversation. Ronald Reagan once said, "How do you tell a communist?" Well, someone who's read Lenin and Marx. How do you tell an anti-communist? It's someone who understands Lenin and Marx. Number 3, socialism does not work well with freedom. The more socialism you have, the more freedom you have to lose. Because socialism can't survive if people are free to choose whether they want socialism or not. People who are free to say what they want will criticize socialism's many failures. Areas that aren't tightly controlled will move toward the free exchange of ideas and goods, not socialism. People will almost always move away from socialist governments when they can, which explains the Berlin Wall. This was required to keep the subjects of the socialist system in, and it also explains the need for a wall on our southern border to keep out all the refugees from socialist countries. Look, I have a heart too, but I really think they should stay in their own country and fight to take it back rather than go into a foreign country and live off of them. 4, it kills economic growth. Strong economic growth is what produces jobs, tax revenue, and a better standard of living for everyone, including the poor and the middle class. Consider this. Most people living in what we consider poverty in the United States would be considered pretty well off anywhere else. Don't think so? How many poor Americans do you know that might have an AC unit, might have cable TV, might have a car? Now go to Gambia or Mexico and see how real poor people live. JFK once said that a rising tide lifts all boats. By this, he meant that in a good economy, capitalist economy, everyone has a better standard of living. No, the rich are not stealing your slice of the pie. Everyone's slice of the pie just gets bigger. The writer and libertarian philosopher Ayn Rand understood that socialism penalizes success and rewards failure. A socialist society will rob from the successful people to give it to the less successful people. The more that give up and get handouts, the more the successful need to be penalized to pay for the failures, and on and on and on. That's what is destroying Venezuela even as I shoot this video. 5, socialists believe that the ends justify the means. Now, they may say that all are equal, but let's face it, some are more equal than others. For example, Fidel Castro, leader of communist Cuba, where everyone is supposed to be all equal, was worth around $900 million when he died. Most of the wealth of Venezuela is concentrated in its ruling class. The poor, and down there it's the real poor, starve, while the government elite get fat. That's all for now. I hope you go below. Give me a thumbs up if you would, and like it says, please subscribe if you enjoy the videos. I also hope you go to Amazon.com and get a copy of my book, Radical Freedom. Until next time, this is Kurt Waldrop. Stay free, my friends. Bye.